Hello. I had the pleasure of meeting Derek last year at a homeschool day, during a homeschool day, and we got to chatting and found out about his ministry, and then I think it was that evening, or it was that evening, we saw each other again at a political event at the Republican committee meeting, and we were just, I don't know, from that point on, I just have had the pleasure of getting to know him, and I feel like we're becoming friends. I really appreciate Derek and the wisdom and the courage that he has to do what he's doing. And it is the issue of our day. We need people like Derek. So I really, really believe that strongly. Derek asked my husband and I to talk about 5 things. So we're going to kind of have a narrative that jumps back and forth between the two of us. And so I'll just dive in. As a 16-year-old, I vividly remember sitting in a conference with my family that we attended every year, and I watched the many homeschool families that attended. I would sit behind them and watch them or stand near them during the breaks and view their interactions. And what I saw there were kids who absolutely loved their parents. They would actually choose to chat with their parents during the breaks. I saw 16-year-old boys with their arms interlocked with their fathers, and I saw 15-year-old girls with their heads leaning on their mom's shoulders during the program. They weren't ashamed of their parents, as many of my high school friends were in the public system, and they acted as if they actually enjoyed being with them. And beyond that, the kids would look people in the eye. They had firm handshakes and were comfortable speaking with not only adults, but kids younger and older than them. And as I watched these homeschoolers, my 16-year-old heart decided then and there that I wanted to do whatever was possible to have that kind of a relationship with my children. And if homeschooling was a ticket there, I would do it. You know, as Christians, we are given the job of training up our children in the way that they should go. And it is ultimately our responsibility as parents to educate our children. And we can get help with that education. We can get help through the public school system. We can get help through the private school systems, Christian schools, or through homeschooling. But as our parents, it is our decision who will ultimately provide the bulk of what is funneled into our kids' hearts and minds during their childhood and youth years. So our family chose to homeschool. We wanted to ensure that the lion's share of the education our 4 kids received was from the people who loved them most, knew them best, had their best interest at heart, and were not afraid to teach them that God belongs in every subject because he created every subject. So thankfully, the man I married, Daniel, was on board with homeschooling. And we began our homeschooling when we began having children. And this May, the last of our 4 children will graduate from homeschool. And although it was not easy and it was not perfect, it was absolutely the best thing possible. When I speak to others about homeschooling, many say that they feel they don't have the ability to homeschool. But I always say, gee, if you taught your child how to tie his shoe, you taught him the alphabet, you can also teach him phonics and his math facts. You can teach him how to write a sentence and then a paragraph and then a 5-paragraph essay. Some say, well, I could teach him during grade school, but I couldn't possibly teach through high school. Those subjects would be way too difficult. Many feel that they did not get a quality education through the public system, so they can't possibly teach their own children in high school. And then I say, well, homeschooling, for the vast majority of parents, is a way to reclaim their own education that they feel in many ways was inadequate. And if you are one of those who feels ill-equipped to teach your kids because of your own faulty education, do you really want to send them through that same institution that left you feeling that way? The good news is that if things get too complicated in geometry or physics, there's lots and lots of help out there. There are tutors, there are co-ops, there are so many options up there, really too many options. You can get overwhelmed. But if you have even an inkling of wanting to homeschool, you most certainly can. Even people who have not finished high school can homeschool their own children. So, and just as so you know, Jonesville Baptist has opened their doors to a high school program called Classical Conversations. It's what we have done for the last 8 years for our homeschooling experience. Classical Conversations homeschool is helps parents by offering outstanding curriculum and once a week community days so that the kids can come together and learn together, and it also gives homeschooling tips and helps for parents on how to homeschool their kids. The kids come together and have outstanding Socratic discussions. In fact, just an aside, I'm directing the high school senior class, and I was getting on my students because in a 50-minute program, one of the 50-minute classes, which was student-led because they have to come prepared every week to teach 3 of the subjects. And then we draw straws, and if your name's picked, you teach that subject. So one of them was being student taught, and I was making tick marks on how many remarks they were making. And 3 of my students made 20 to 23 comments, worthwhile comments. One of them made 18 comments, and 2 of them made 5 comments. And I was getting on those that made 5 comments because they were not towing the mark. They have to be better. They have to rise up to the situation. And I was telling that to somebody in the public school system, and they're like just looking at me with wide eyes because even somebody that made 5 worthwhile comments in a 50-minute class would be outstanding. So just, you don't realize when you're not in it kind of what you do have in your hand, and it is classical conversation is a fabulous way because it's interaction constantly, back and forth, asking questions, Socratic dialogue, all of that. Children from preschool through all levels of high school receive an extremely rigorous education to that. The stated goal of Classical Conversations is this: to classically educate our kids in a Christ-centered worldview with the goal of them knowing God and making Him known. If you want to know more about Classical Conversations, talk to me later at my booth, and I'd love to chat with you. So we came to the realization that homeschooling was for us, but that is not possible for everyone. And so when we moved to Gainesville just over a year ago, we found ourselves kind of thrown in the political realm, and with my husband feeling called to run for the Alachua County Public School Board, for the school board, and to help with the public education here. And so he's here to tell you a little bit about that right now.
All right, so some of you know me because we saw each other at political events. Others, you probably saw the sign. That's my wife just kissing my sign, but it was all over. I did run for school board because when we moved to Alachua County, we were recruited they were looking for people who would get involved and had a certain skill set. So I had retired from the military after 28 years. I still do teach as an adjunct professor for 10 years, and we had seen our kids go through the homeschool system, and so I decided to go ahead and run. Well, we moved here in March, and I started researching running in June. So we didn't move into our house or anything. We still lived out of boxes for a year while I ran the campaign. And I'm a researcher by nature, and so I dove into the school system at a very granular level. The Lord was very good to me because He brought a lot of advisors into my life, and I think I ran a very effective campaign. We lost primarily because of low voter turnout. It's very hard to get Christian Republicans to vote in this county. There was only a 29% turnout, and I lost by 10,000 votes. The Democrats had a very strong turnout, and had we pushed, really, we could have won very easily if we could have just engaged people to understand the battle that's occurring in the school system. And so part of running for school board was I became a high school teacher. I was accepted into U.S. Masters of Real Estate program because when I retired, it's what I always wanted to do for years. But I gave that up, and I decided to teach at the public school system. I went to teach in Williston Middle High School because you can't teach and be on the board in the same district. And I'm telling you, it was eye-opening. Sherrill will tell you, I used to come home from school, and I was just amazed at how much these kids don't know and how much of a struggle it was. I was teaching 10th and 11th grade English, and I was teaching them how to write a paragraph. And the interesting thing about the school system, and I'm not here to bash the public school system, I'm really not. I'm here to give you an insight into the battle that we have to fight. The biggest problem is the people in the school system, it's kind of like the frog in the water. They don't realize what the system has morphed into unless you come from the outside. And so, you know, we'd be in these discussions and we'd be like, we need more intervention, we need more intervention. And I'm like, no, intervention's not the problem. The problem is they've been through 9 years of school. How do they not know how to write a paragraph? I mean, let's fundamentally start there, right? What is going wrong in those early stages where it's not 5% of the students don't know how, it's 95% don't know how and 5 do. It's a really broken system. And, you know, the blessing of COVID was that we got to see, parents finally got to see what was going on in the classroom. And so when I ran, I really thought there would be a much bigger uproar of parents wanting to get involved, and there were, but unfortunately that didn't translate into voting, which is okay. So at Williston, let me tell you what I have observed about the public school system. Number one, discipline is a huge issue in the public school system. Kids will not be quiet. It's I would argue, it's what's driving teachers away. It's not more money, because you can't pay enough of those teachers. You can't pay enough to get those teachers to stay in a classroom where they're afraid they're going to be beat up or assaulted. Number two, cell phones are having a devastating effect on the education process. We're blessed in Levy. They don't allow cell phones. In Alachua County, they do, and teachers will tell you the kids are on their phone the entire time during class. So number three, the LGBTQ issue is a real issue. There are a lot of kids struggling with it. I have some in my class. I won't use pronouns. I don't want to get into the argument of why or why not, but I will call them by their preferred name. But you can see it in their eye. They're struggling and they're hurting. And the public school answer, of course, is, well, we just need more counselors. We just need more. They're so ill-equipped to handle what's going on. And it's not just the LGBTQ students. We just had a middle schooler commit suicide. He hung himself 2 days ago because he broke up with a girl. Now, let that sink in for a minute. Where do we have to get with our kids that breaking up with a girl would cause you to commit suicide? Right? And so what's going on in the public school system, it would startle you how little learning is going on. And we did the classical model, so I bring a lot of that classical stuff in, and I'm telling you, the kids' heads are spinning. They're like, what do you mean I have to stand up in front of the class? Well, you have to stand up in front of the class and speak. And it's fascinating. So I learned all that while I was running. We didn't win. And Sherrill and I would have people come up to us and say, how are you doing? You didn't win. Well, first of all, I hate to lose. That's most people who have achieved anything hate to lose because we're competitive by nature. But more importantly, I've always been a big believer in Romans 8:28, all things work together to good to those who love God, who are called according to his purpose, who predestined us from the beginning of time, etc. And so while I hate to lose, what I gained from that year and a half was an immense, intimate, granular knowledge of how the education system works. I met phenomenal people. I'm running in circles now. Just last month, I got to go to a conference and talk to Manny Diaz, the Commissioner of Education, a few other people. So now, all of a sudden, I find myself thrown into a world of education where I'm trying to work and make a difference. And how we're going to do that, I'll tell you the exciting part of that later. But the good news of what happened with my school board run is I got to meet some incredible people. I got to know the school district, and I feel like I'm very equipped now to go and start to begin the argument. Because Sherrill will tell you, I came home and said, Sherrill, if anybody ever tells me again that public school is a superior model to homeschooling, I'm going to call them a liar to their face. Because I'm in the public school system, and you cannot convince me that homeschooling now is not a phenomenal option. Not the only option, but it is a phenomenal option for parents. So with that said, one of the groups that I met while I was running was Moms for Liberty, and Sherrill's involved in that, and so now she's going to come up and tell you a little bit about Moms for Liberty, and then I'll tell you the most exciting reveal news that Alachua has heard in a long time. So here is Sherrill.
So just a few years ago, two moms began a mission to stoke the fires of liberty. As former school board members, they had witnessed how short-sighted and destructive policies directly hurt children and families. Now they are using their firsthand knowledge and experience to unite parents who are ready to fight those that stand in the way of liberty. And that organization they began is called Moms for Liberty. This is their mission statement. Moms for Liberty is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. How do they fight? This is what they say. We hold decision makers accountable, or we work to replace them with liberty-minded individuals. We spread awareness and an understanding of the limited role of government. We stand together against government overreach and intimidation tactics. We promote teaching the principles of liberty in our homes and community. We engage our community and elected leaders on key issues impacting our families. We activate liberty-minded leaders to serve in elected positions. So the Gainesville Moms for Liberty chapter began just as COVID was hitting. And so they could not meet together, and it kind of floundered. There were mamas in there that were dedicated to that, but they just couldn't get off the ground. So we are working to relaunch the Moms for Liberty in Gainesville at the beginning of this next year in January 2023. If you think that you are interested in doing something like that, or you know somebody that is would like to work with a group of dynamic women who put feet to their beliefs, come by the table afterwards, sign up, we'll get you more information. So as we've journeyed along this educational and political path, my husband was led to an exciting thing. I'll let him reveal what that is.
And I apologize. I didn't mean to say I would call him a liar. I meant to say I would argue with you and bear to differ. So I apologize. That was pretty harsh, and I apologize for that. Because I have a heart for public education as well. Because as great as homeschooling is, it's not for everybody. And if you just think about the definition of an education system, it implies that there's not just one model. It is a system to educate kids. The problem the public school mass-produced education is it works for 70% or so of the kids who have good parents and can work it. But as a business person, you guys can probably connect to this. There's a difference between getting results because of a process and getting results despite a process. And I would suggest to you that a lot of the good stuff you hear is despite what's going on, not because of what's going on. And excellence has been lost in our public school system. Mediocrity now is the accepted standard. And if you want excellence, you've got to go to a magnet school or the IB, because it's no longer in the classroom. And so that's the exciting part I want to tell you. So after the election was over, I had several people call after they asked me how I was doing, and I said, I'm great. I can get my house in order and spend time with my kids again. They said, hey, how about a charter school in Alachua County? So can you flip the slide? Nope. Yep, there it is. Yep. Go back one. Sorry. I didn't understand the difference. Okay. So we're going to partner with Hillsdale to bring a classical charter school to Alachua County. Now, if you knew what classical education was, you'd be really excited for that, because the classical model of education is foundational principles are those three things that we have up there. First and foremost, learn the truth. It goes all the way back to Aristotle and Socrates. The reason why they gained knowledge was not to gain knowledge, it was to seek truth. And the education system that can't seek truth is not an education system, it's a feeling validation exercise, which is what a lot of the education system is now. It's no longer about what's true, but about how you feel. And so these charter schools are grounded in learn the truth, do the good, see the beautiful. And in the classical model, that means they study art, they study the classical music. They read the great works. They are based on the trivium. If you can go to the next slide. This is what classical education looks like. It's called the trivium. You focus on knowledge and grammar, which Sherrill is much more an expert on the trivium because she has actually educated. You have logic and you have rhetoric, because rhetoric translates into being able to understand wisdom, with all truth comes from God. You have logic, you have to be able to critically think. It's all the things we think's going on, but really isn't. Because unless you're pursuing truth, what can you have left in education if it's not true, right? Feelings are not education. Feelings are just that. They're not true. They change depending on which morning and how you feel. But truth doesn't change, and so the classical model is based upon there are truths, and we need to teach our students how to find that truth. And then once they know the truth, how to debate that truth, right, Cheryl? And then once they know how to debate that truth, they can go out then and change the world with the truth that they have, and they know what they believe and why they believe it. And so we're excited to do that. I think when we bring a school like this to Alachua County, the demand is going to far exceed anything that we could match. So we're putting together a business plan now that will allow multiple charter schools to open in Alachua County. And it's not to destroy the public, although if you read the hit pieces that they sent out against me, I want to destroy all public education system. And they gave a picture that made me look like a leper cancer patient, right? All flushed out. None of that is true. I love the public education system because as long as our society says we're going to educate every child with a free education, there has to be different models that work for each family. I just want to argue for all those solutions to be on the table. None should be taken off. And that includes a charter school. And here's the other thing, and the reason why I even found out about this, the achievement gap is a huge issue in Alachua County. The problem is they meaning my opponents, really have no solution to fix it. The solution to fix it is not less academics, it's more academics. And if you look at the stats, minority children do far better in charter schools than they do in the open public school system. That's why I even found out about it. And had I won on the board, one of the things I wanted to do was bring a charter school into Alachua County for the minority students to close that achievement gap. That was my solution. I didn't win, so I'm going to continue to do what I pledged to do, which is bring a charter school to Alachua County. So thank you. Sherrill and I will do it. And if you go to the next slide, there we go. That's how you can contact us. Please, if you're interested in the charter school or you'd like to be a part of that and help, we're going to start probably in the first of the year with an outreach program, going to churches, going to organizations, and really selling the vision of what it can be. And if you're interested in helping with that, please reach out to Sherrill or me at those numbers, and we would love to have you on our team. All right? Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over to Sherrill.
And so one last thing, Derek said that I could mention this. We're doing okay on time? Okay. Like so many other things in almost everything, normalization brings increased behavior in that area. When things are made to become normal, more people do it. One way people seek to normalize behavior in our culture is to get laws passed, and that helps people say, well, if it's legal, then it must be okay, and more people do it. Everyone else is doing it, why can't I? Is a very human and often sinful response. Therefore, it is imperative that we try to not allow laws to be passed or work hard to get laws taken off the books that have been passed that work against God's design for his people. And that's why many Christians are involved in the political process, trying to hold back the encroachment on society by so many different things that are dangerous to a healthy society. So many people are unhappy with the political process, but they just don't know what to do about it. They want to do something, but they're not sure what to do, and they're a little frightened to stand up. If you want to put your toe in the water of political involvement, there is an election on Tuesday. There are 64 polling places that we are trying to cover for a particular initiative We've already been covering 7 polling places for the last 10 days with about 28 people a day covering those. Those people are kind of tired. We need good people to do something to help us. So Derek said I could mention this specific thing. It's for the single member district initiative. One party rule has been ruling for the past 40 years, with only 2 people being elected in the past 40 years from the opposite side. What happens is the urban community in the city makes decisions for all of the county because of how the district runs. You have to run for the whole county if you're on the county commission. You have to run district or countywide, so that's 185,000 voters that you have to cover. It's one of the reasons why running for school board is so hard, because you have to contact all those people. It plays to big money people. It doesn't play for grassroots representation at all. So the single member district is for the county commission. If we could get that so that Newberry can be elected, can be represented by somebody who not only lives in that district, but has to be voted in by those people, and then voted out if they don't represent their district, right? And East Gainesville should be represented by someone who brings their needs to the table. And so everybody should have these representatives that promote and their community, although they make decisions for everyone when they're on the board, of course. Anyway, that's what we're doing. And it is, if you want to just do something that's easy, that gets you started in the political process, because I warn you, it's a little habit forming when you start getting involved in politics, as many of you already know. But if you haven't done it and you're a little nervous about it, this is an easy way to do it. It's like in 3-hour increments. If you can't do 3, you can do 2. You stand at a polling place with a sign that speaks for you. You smile and wave at voters as they come. And if the other side gives their information, which they do constantly, you just give your information, say, here's another option for grassroots representation. Boom. So if you would like to do that, we would love to have your help, and you can contact us back at the thing, or that phone number right there. You can call that number and say, hey, I'll give some time on Tuesday. It's from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. all day long at 64 locations. If you do the math, that's a lot of people. So anyway, huge thanks to Derek for leading the charge with this identity ministry in our community. It is the issue of our day, and it's so vital, and thank you, Derek.